It's simply undeniable that millions of Texans are outraged by our state's ban on nearly all abortions. What is also undeniable is that millions of Texans just aren't. While perhaps something of an oversimplification, we hypothesize the current state of division because of this. The UH Hobby Center TSU poll, which has incumbent Republican Governor Greg Abbott 7 points ahead of Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke. That's a couple of points higher than we saw in early August in the wake of the immediate rage of the Roe reversal. Panel, my question is this: is there still an untapped reservoir of pro-choice, pro-gun control voters out there for Beto to somehow harvest? I throw that question to Bill King.
Well, historically, abortion's not moved elections. It's because there's a relatively small number of people that feel very strongly about it on either end of the political spectrum. And those folks already are voting and they already know who they're voting for. The middle part of the spectrum typically has not been moved by abortion. Now, I think Roe was the repeal of Roe was sort of a wake-up call. And I do sense a change in the momentum in these races. Right now, it doesn't look like it's enough to affect any of the election. It might get Paxton because he's so unpopular. But my guess is it's not going to move the bubble.
Tomorrow, Bell, you've been talking to millennials, and you and I have been talking. They are reacting strongly. Do you think it will be enough to get them to the polls?
I'm impressed by the amount of, as they call them, light blue voters, which means young women voters who are registering to vote. You know, when people say, well, it won't affect the people that are voting because they were going to vote for Beto anyway, that's not true. These people, most of them, they weren't even registered to vote. And now they have gotten registered to vote because this change in this law affects their age group. Now, if you beyond having children and all of that, it may you ain't not be impacting you. But if you're a young woman, I'm telling you, because they were crying at my house when this happened. They are devastated that under no circumstances can you have an abortion, especially if you're they have a serious problem. So I do believe it is energizing them. Now, will that hold to November? I don't know. But I know for a fact it is energizing them to register to vote.
Holly Hansen, Democrats had hoped the growing furor would somehow move Beto into striking distance. Instead, we see that his margin goes back to that 7 that it's been for several months.
Yes, I think this issue has peaked as the people learn more about the law. There's been a lot of misinformation about it. There are exceptions for the health and safety of the mother. Beto's position there is fairly extreme because he supports absolutely no restrictions through all 9 months of pregnancy. That's more extreme than even European laws, which are based on a kind of a secular precedent and attitude towards things. So I think this has peaked. I think people are shifting now to talking more about crime, what's happening at the border, and what's happening in the economy.
Sergio Lira, during the legislative session, Democrats kind of eased away from making this a bellwether issue, in part because they didn't want to hack off Texas Latinos who are really split on the issue of abortion. What are you hearing from your community?
What I'm hearing is that Beto is re-energizing the community, the base, the Democrats, especially in large urban areas, especially on this issue and also on the recent mass shootings in the weak gun laws that we have here in Texas. That is what's going to bring out. But more importantly, Beto needs to do is make inroads or convince the white women voters and the panhandle and the rural areas on this issue that affects women directly. So I think he's making some inroads. He's closing the gap. He's going to close it as we get closer to the election date, but also National Democratic Party needs to step in and help him.
Bob Price, you have your finger on the pulse of what has been a conservative majority here in Texas and is likely to remain such. What are you hearing out there?
Well, somebody needs to step in and help Robert Francis O'Rourke because he's a lightweight and he doesn't carry the issues well to the people, and so he just doesn't have the credibility. He's failed 3 times in the past, and this is going to be another non-exception to that rule. So this is the way laws are supposed to be decided. You have the debates at the state level. You don't get a dictate from 9 people in Washington, D.C. that says this is the law of the land. You now have the opportunity here in Texas to debate the issue, to talk about it, to vote on it, to deal with it and create law that makes sense. Democrats could have codified Roe v. Wade for decades. They had the opportunity to do that. They could have done it with no Republican votes several times, and they didn't do that. Ann Richards didn't do it when she was governor of Texas. So this issue is now before the voters. The campaign is just getting started. Nobody pays attention to these races until after Labor Day. So let's see what Greg Abbott does with Robert Francis O'Rourke over the next few weeks.
All right, Bill King, we've got something like 57 days until the November election. I'm going to ask you about potential game changers. What needs to happen to move 4 or 5 points either way?
I think if you had another terrible mass shooting, you might have that might move the needle some. A terrible situation where a woman dies from an abortion or something like that might move the needle. But I don't know. The problem is, Bob's right. O'Rourke is a terrible candidate. If the Democrats had a better candidate for governor, I think Abbott would be in more jeopardy. But he said so many crazy things over the years in the campaigns. And you've got these nutty platform issues. The Democratic platform in Texas says they want to ban fracking in Texas. This is the problem with both of these parties. They are so ridiculous and so extreme in what they want to put forth as policy positions. Those of us in the middle have to sort of go to the poll and say, what's the worst, what's the least worst of the choices I've got to vote for.
All right, Holly, real quickly, are those extreme positions on either side of the aisle hurting local candidates?
I think that's possible that they are, but local candidates are more focused on what local government does, or, well, they should be. So, for example, at the county level, we should be concerned about what county government is responsible for. And the number one issue, public safety, and that's a problem here locally.